Alright, let's dive into the gritty world of rap feuds and the tragic consequences that often follow. It's impossible to ignore the toll these conflicts take on young, talented artists, most times leading them to untimely graves. The cycle of rap battles and diss tracks seems to spiral out of control, and it's crazy how these beefs don't just fizzle out.
When people get shot, you do the same thing. You're not innocent.
Yeah, you can say that. I know what I signed up for, so yeah, you can say that.
Take the drama in Jacksonville, for instance. Foolio's death could have been avoided if he had chosen a different path. Foolio had been targeted in multiple attempts on his life before, but he didn't let that stop him from dissing his enemies and even bragging about smoking out some of their associates.
Foolio, man, you a bitch, nigga. About my dead homeboy, nigga. You just dropped that shit, nigga. I'm on the shit. Shout out to Feuds, you know we the latest. You talking about Opps, we're on the biggest. I got the key.
It's a harsh reminder that these feuds can escalate dangerously. Then there's Bando, who was just 17 when he lost his life. He was a young aspiring rapper who got caught up in the gang scene. His track Fact seemed to foreshadow the violence that would soon claim him. On November 7th, 2019, Bando was tragically gunned down just blocks away from his own home. It's a sobering example of how the streets can claim lives so young. You'd think these stories would serve as warnings, but sadly, they don't always seem to. In 2020, FBG Duck found himself facing the consequences of his involvement in rap beefs. Known for his ties with the FBG gang, Duck stirred up trouble with his diss track Dead Bees, targeting people like Jerome Lobu Anderson, who was killed back in 2015, as well as other deceased rivals. His provocative lyrics didn't go unnoticed, and soon enough a few cars showed up and riddled him with bullets, leading to his death.
Members of Chicago's O-Block gang have been convicted in the 2020 murder of a rapper known as FBG Duck. Duck's real name was Carlton Weekly. He was shot and killed shopping on Oak Street 4 and 34. All 6 were convicted of conspiracy to commit murder and murder in the aid of racketeering.
There's a long list of rappers who have faced the deadly consequences of their actions and words. The cycle of violence in this world is relentless, and it seems like the lessons are not always learned. Stick around as we delve deeper into more of these intense and tragic stories of these young rappers. On October 8th, 2020, and we see this young rapper Bando Hothead, whose real name was Damian Rogers, becoming a tragic headline.
My mama, bitch. You know the we at too, we on RT. Pull up. Yeah. Tay, bitch.
Bando, only 17 at the time, was an aspiring artiste who had his whole future ahead of him. Damian Rogers, known in the rap world as Bando Hothead, was tragically gunned down close to his home. It was around 4:23 p.m. when the attack occurred. Someone approached him and unleashed a barrage of bullets, hitting him multiple times in the head, groin, and back. When emergency services arrived, they did their best to resuscitate him, but unfortunately they were unable to save him, and he was pronounced dead on the scene.
They not on the thing, and the phone switch lanes. Got a bad luck, trying to meet the game.
Just about a year before his death, on November 7th, 2019, Bando Hothead, alongside BG Lil Pat, dropped a track called Facts.
Do it.
In this song, they took aim at various rival factions, including members of Biok, Brick Squad, 7 Deuce, Del Mob, and WNB. The song was laced with disrespectful lyrics aimed at deceased members of these groups, which only added fuel to the fire of ongoing gang conflicts in the area. Given the timing and the inflammatory nature of the song, many believe that Bando Hothead's murder was a direct act of retaliation. This tragic event has only added to the grim statistics of gun violence in the region, making Bando yet another casualty in the cycle of violence perpetuated by these feuding gangs. The Area South Homicide Unit is still investigating the case, but the prevailing sentiment among many is that the lethal confrontation was a direct response to the disrespectful content of the track Facts. Many of these cases underscore the harsh realities faced by many young rappers involved in gang culture. From public confrontations to deadly retaliation, their lives are often marked by the very violence they rap about.
Now let's be facts.
So how many disses will it take to get a rapper digging his own grave? Diss tracks have been a staple in hip-hop since the 80s, but nowadays street-affiliated rappers have really cranked it up a notch. Now, let's take a quick into a tragic example. Foolio, a rapper from Jacksonville, Florida. He is a prime example of how things can escalate. Foolio, known for his intense diss tracks, was fatally shot on June 24, 2024, while celebrating his birthday in Tampa. But this was just the latest in a string of violent encounters he'd faced over the past few years. Before this, he had been shot at in October 2023, had a severe foot injury, and had been involved in multiple other shootouts.
This barrage of gunfire also struck 3 additional victims who miraculously survived this incident.
Foolio was no stranger to violence. He claimed he'd narrowly escaped death multiple times.
Yeah, because this is like your 4th time, escaping, shootouts. 4th time in 8 years?
Yep. It was this year, last year, I think 2 years before that, and then I got shot when I was before that, yep.
Despite these close calls, he continued to live dangerously, often without security. He had a reputation for making enemies and wasn't shy about it. His beef with fellow Jacksonville rapper Yungeen Ace was especially notorious.
I don't know him. I never seen him before in my life.
This feud, which started around 2017, saw them trading diss tracks and escalating the rivalry to real-life violence.
Yeah, these niggas know what we do. Who I smoke, baby, who I smoke. I got the dead ass on my mind when I see you. Get dead like 232.
Foolio's diss tracks were brutal, with lyrics that glorified violence and mocked his opponent's dead friends. For instance, after Yungeen Ace's associates were killed, Foolio didn't hold back. He even released a remix of Fantasia's When I See You, turning it into a track dissing his rivals, which only fueled the fire.
Nobody outside. Pussy boy, you don't get no rep on doing drive-bys. Ace from the west, how he clicked up with the...
As his beef with Yungeen Ace intensified, it seemed like Foolio was always pushing the boundaries. Even when he narrowly escaped death, he kept antagonizing his rivals. For example, after a shooting in 2021, Foolio continued to mock his enemies and even taunted Yungeen Ace after the death of his brother and other associates. By June 2024, Foolio was celebrating his birthday with a pool party in Tampa, openly posting about his whereabouts and even showing off his intoxicated state on social media.
Got the address, pull up, man. We got the address, pull up. If you need the address, DM me right now. Pool party start at 5, 6 o'clock.
This blatant flaunting of his location made him an easy target, and tragically, he was shot and killed that night.
In Tampa, where police are still looking for the person who shot and killed a rapper and hurt 3 others outside of a hotel there. 3 others were injured in that shooting, as we said. Also known as Foolio was reportedly there to celebrate his birthday. I think he was turning, 26 or 27.
His death shocked many, but didn't surprise others who had followed his tumultuous career. Foolio's passing has left a mark on the Florida drill scene and has raised questions about the consequences of such intense rivalries. Yungeen Ace, who had his own share of controversies, has faced speculation about potential retaliation and whether he'll be the next target.
So Yungeen Ace has long been known in Jacksonville. We are consistently monitoring those groups.
In the end, the world of diss tracks and street beefs is dangerous and all too real. Foolio's story is a stark reminder of how quickly things can spiral out of control when the lines between music and real life blur. Lil Marc, whose real name was Mark Campbell, was a rapper from Chicago's South Side who went by the stage name Lil Marc. He was deeply embedded in the 051 Young Money gang, a group notorious for its involvement in violent and drug-related activities. Marc gained recognition within the Sharrock drill movement, a subgenre of drill music that's often associated with the gritty realities of gang life. On Saturday, March 28, 2014, Marc was waiting at a bus stop on the 300 block of East 51st Street, just 5 days after dropping a controversial music video titled No Competition.
Wake up, ate a bowl of just what.
In this video, he took aim at rival gang members from OTF, Only the Family, 600, and O-Block, even going so far as to taunt 10 of their deceased members while brandishing firearms. The video was a clear provocation, and it was only a matter of time before the tension boiled over. Around 1:27 p.m. that day, Marc was tragically shot once in the head. The Cook County Coroner's Office confirmed his death, but details about the exact circumstances remain murky. Although no suspects were ever caught, rumors suggest that members of 46 Terror, a rival gang to 051 Young Money, might have been behind the attack. In the aftermath of Marc's death, his rivals didn't hold back. They began dissing him in their own tracks, turning his passing into a new point of contention in their ongoing feud. So here's another wild story that unfolded in the rap world recently. This rapper, who went by the name YBC Dul, was just shot and killed after making headlines with some seriously inflammatory remarks during his No Jumper interview.
We bully our ops. That's who we bully. We bully niggas. We do shit that niggas so-called they think they did something to us or they did something to us.
Now, just to be clear, it is believed that he might have met a tragic end even without that interview, but it certainly didn't help his situation.
Top seed in the West, nigga. The tires grab Cruzy by the legs, they drug into the hell.
YBC Dul, hailing from Philadelphia, was notorious for his relentless and provocative tactics. He went all out on No Jumper, taking shots at practically every rival and neighborhood in Philly. This guy was so dedicated to the drama that he even gained national attention by showing up at the grave of one of his enemies, a young man named Kwani. Kwani's family had intentionally avoided giving him a headstone to keep his resting place secret from rivals, but Dul found out anyway and made a spectacle out of it. He even posted a picture of Kwani's body on Instagram, taunting and disrespecting him with some pretty brutal captions. Dul didn't stop there. He continued to antagonize his enemies with a series of posts, mocking their deceased loved ones and even targeting specific people. In one of his posts, he dissed Kwani's dead body directly, making inflammatory comments and challenging others. He went so far as to post about his enemies' graves and flaunt his lack of fear. When asked about his future plans during the interview, Dul responded with a chillingly casual remark about his upcoming music, including a sequel to MC Buns and McNuggets. He even referred to his rivals in McDonald's as part of his ongoing beef, regularly taunting employees who worked with his enemies.
Different states, I'm walking right past TSA, they check my luggage weight. How the
What's striking is that Dul's behavior seemed almost like a death wish. He was so committed to dissing his rivals and escalating the conflict that it seemed like he was seeking out trouble. He wasn't just targeting a few individuals. He was dissing entire neighborhoods, creating a massive target on his back. And as if things weren't already intense enough, he did something shocking towards the end of the interview. When Adam asked about his future, Dul cheerfully hoped for more bloodshed, indicating that more violence would give him more material to rap about. It was as if he was openly embracing the chaos and using it to fuel his music career.
So, Parkside, Bud, Blow for Bud, all them niggas. Is the real disrespectful. I'm gonna fuck who you is. I will disrespect you.
Sadly, just 24 hours after a video surfaced where Dul boasted about never being touched by his enemies, he was shot and killed. The details of his death are grim. He was found on the 5500 block of North 6th Street in Philadelphia, shot multiple times in the chest. Despite the police's ongoing investigation, no arrests have been made, and many believe the cops might see his death as a kind of twisted justice, given his provocative behavior. The cycle of violence seems set to continue, with rival factions already taking to social media to mock Dul's death. It's a tragic reminder of how deeply ingrained and destructive these conflicts can be. If you're into Lil Durk, you might have caught a line in his track Should've Ducked, where he references some serious street drama. We're not diving too deep into the whole dissing dead ops thing here, but the rapper he's targeting is FBG Duck.
That mask on when you jump out first, you better blast. Yeah, we don't like slow shit, don't hit them switches.
They left his shit out tight. Bullets was hitting him, he was singing like Mariah.
Duck, the head honcho of 63rd Street, or STLEBT, was a gangster disciple from way back. In case you didn't know, the GDs, or Gangster Disciples, are rivaled by the Black Disciples, the BS, which includes rappers like King Von and Lil Durk himself. Duck was all about that gang life, and his music reflected his gritty experiences. He was a big name in the Flyboy gang, FBG, which was tight with the GDs. Duck's rise in the rap game gave him a new way to throw shade at his enemies, with tracks like Slide setting the tone for his level of disrespect. He was locked in a long feud with the notorious O-Block, and he was well aware of the dangers that came with it. Duck even took steps to protect himself, like stopping his friends from sharing his location online. In his song Dead Bees, Duck disses Jerome Lobu Anderson, a 22-year-old Black Disciples member who was fatally shot back in 2015. The conflict between the 600 faction of the Black Disciples and other gangs was intense, and many thought Anderson's murder was payback for another gang member's death. Duck also mentions Shero and Lil Steve, other Black Disciples figures. This track was just one example of how Duck taunted his dead Opps, and it certainly stirred up trouble.
I heard about that too, but f him though, he a pack too. If we ever said it's up that bitch, I swear to God we mean it.
On August 4th, 2020, Duck was out shopping when a couple of cars rolled up and unloaded shots on him, resulting in his death. Duck had a $100,000 bounty on his head, and just days after his death, King Von from O-Block was seen distributing custom chains, adding fuel to the fire. Von even mocked Duck's death in interviews, pretending to be upset while actually trolling Duck's family and friends.
Gangsta of the year. What you think about that? Huh? What you think about these sweaters? What sweater?
But the story doesn't end there. Less than 3 months later, King Von himself was shot and killed after getting into a fight with Quando Rondo's crew at a hookah lounge. Von's life was marked by his violent lifestyle and beefs with other rappers, and despite moving to Atlanta, he couldn't escape the drama. Von's death was tied to his ongoing conflicts, and the shooter, Lil Tim, had his charges dropped as the killing was deemed self-defense. Lil Durk, who had beef with Von and the O-Block, didn't hold back. He used the opportunity to diss his enemies. While Von's passing was met with mixed reactions, some saw it as karma for all the dissing he did, especially towards Tuka, a 15-year-old from Chicago who was tragically murdered in 2012. Von had mentioned Tuka in his songs numerous times, adding to the ongoing feud. King Von's death didn't wrap up his beefs or end the violence. Lil Tim's survival and the lack of legal consequences only fueled further tension. Even though Quando Rondo tried to distance himself from the situation, he's still faced with the repercussions of the ongoing feud. As of 2023, Quando Rondo was ambushed at a gas station, leading to the death of his friend Lil P.A.B.
Shots fired, a fight taken to the streets, and this chaotic scene, the ending of a shooting that started in Los Angeles, California.
Lil Durk capitalized on this by using footage of the incident in his music, continuing the cycle of disrespect and retaliation. Rondo's label boss NBA Youngboy has also weighed in, making references to King Von's death in his songs. The cycle of dissing dead Opps and dealing with the fallout is relentless, and whether or not Rondo will manage to stay out of trouble remains to be seen. Now let's talk about Lil Tjay, another name that's been buzzing lately. Lil Tjay, hailing from the Bronx and associated with the blood-affiliated Slattery Boys, is no stranger to drama. He's had his fair share of beefs, including some serious wordplay battles with other big names like A Boogie and Don Q over the title of King of New York. His affiliations have naturally put him at odds with rival crews, like the YS and Drills in New York.
The way you kiss me when I'm stroking deep inside of it, I swear you're honest.
TJ's bravado hasn't been limited to just his music. He's been known to talk tough online, throwing shade and making bold statements.
And it's funny how you changed up, got a new bitch, I'm mad that you ain't her.
But here's where things took a crazy turn. After suggesting he might get even with his enemies, Jay ended up in a dire situation himself. He was shot 7 times in a robbery, just narrowly avoiding being paralyzed. The reports say he had to go through emergency surgery, which was touch and go. From his hospital bed, Tjay gave his fans an update. He was grateful for the support and let everyone know he was still in the game, ready to bounce back stronger. He even started recording new music right from his hospital room. But rather than focusing on his recovery and the positive aspects of surviving such a traumatic event, Jay went right back to taunting his rivals in his tracks. His track Beat the Odds was a direct continuation of his tough talk, and honestly, it didn't win him any new sympathy from fans.
Being no stock, I was hungry for that money like a
Some people felt that Tjay's immediate return to dissing his enemies was more about keeping the drama alive than truly focusing on his recovery. There were comments suggesting that if he got shot again, it would be on him for not changing his ways. It's a sad reality that some believed his near-death experience didn't bring the growth or maturity one might expect. Now, Despite his brush with death, Tjay's return to the music scene has been met with mixed reviews. Some listeners think his music has taken a hit, possibly due to his immature attitude towards his situation. This ongoing cycle of violence and retaliation is a harsh reminder that the street code still reigns supreme for many, even when it almost costs them their lives. Tjay's story underscores a grim reality. As long as gang violence continues to be a part of the culture, both in hip-hop and in the streets, we're likely to see more of this tragic cycle. Shootasshellz, whose real name was Sidron Doles, was a controversial figure in the Chicago rap scene.
Plus they can't catch me out here locking that shit over here. Hey, I got some hitters.
Known for his connection to the Black Peace Stone faction called Black Mob, Shootasshellz was a rapper who didn't shy away from stirring the pot. His song, Death of 150, drew a lot of attention, racking up over 6 million views on YouTube. In this track, Shellz took aim at his rivals, specifically targeting the No Limit crew, and threw shade at several fellow rappers like G Herbo.
Cause you ain't ballin' like you Kobe till you dead, nigga.
Like many diss tracks, Death of 150 wasn't just about trash talking. It delved into the circumstances surrounding the deaths of his enemies and their lives before they were gone. The song's lyrics went something like this: Little Herb, Bezos, Vito, Chemo, Pistol, Kobe, whatever you want to call him, the whole 150 dead or alive, he Opps. It was a raw, unfiltered look at the rivalries and violence that define much of the gang landscape in Chicago. Tragically, Shellz's own story came to a violent end just a few months after the song's release. In April 2017, while he was getting into his car in Auburn Gresham on the 8100 block of South Paulina, 3 men emerged from a white Nissan Altima and opened fire. They shot Shellz multiple times in the head and torso, leaving him for dead. By the time paramedics arrived, he was pronounced dead at the scene.
Bad blood, and then as we got older, high school, and then motherfuckers started playing with guns, people started dying, or somebody got shot, and ain't nobody gonna let.
His death was part of a grim statistic, one of 13 people murdered in Chicago that day, and one of only 2 who were fatally injured. The violence that day was believed to be linked to the ongoing gang conflicts in the area, with many of the victims being associated with rival factions of No Limit 150. The scene was littered with 43 shell casings, and Shellz took at least 15 shots directly to the face, according to the local coroner's office. Even if emergency services had arrived sooner, the extent of his injuries would have been fatal. Interestingly, just a month before his death, Shellz had shared his thoughts with a hip-hop blogger about the violence plaguing the south side of Chicago. He suggested that the only way to change the status quo was for the gangs themselves to work towards peace and put aside their differences.
Once a motherfucker get hit, bloodshed, the shit, it'll never be the same.
This kind of insight reflects the deep-rooted issues in a city that has been grappling with escalating violence for decades. Since the 1960s, Chicago has seen over 40,000 homicide deaths, and gun violence is estimated to cost the city around $2.5 billion each year. In a city where the cycle of violence seems unending, Shootasshellz's story is a stark reminder of the brutal realities faced by those entangled in gang culture. The summary of this is that no one is truly untouchable, and real change can't happen while the cycle of violence persists. With rappers continuing to bring their beefs into their music and public personas, it seems like we're in for a long road before we see any meaningful change in this pattern.